Fairy Whispering explores the multi-sensory pathways to connect with the other world, such as listening to the messages in owls' hoots, singing to mermaids in a moonlit cove, or knowing just what to give a gnome when they come to dinner. I'm Claire Casely, a Fairy Whisperer. Take my hand and I'll guide you safely through the enchanted twilight woodland, where they are waiting to meet you. If you enjoy this episode and would like to support the show, you can sign up to my Fairy Whisperer Patreon community. See links in the notes for this show. Hello to my Fairy Whispering podcast listeners. I have something special for you starting on the 1st of March. Join me, Claire Casely, your host for Faequinox. It's a month-long celebration embracing the joyous spring equinox together with the fairies on my podcast and in my Patreon community. As well as episodes, there are some special online events and bonuses for patrons. I love to co-create with beautiful souls who are here to uplift the vibration and be advocates for the fairies and otherworld. And I have some wonderful guests sharing their fairy experiences and how they work in alliance with the fairies and nature for well-being and to create a better world. I also have some edited replays and guest updates from past episodes. My events include Meet Your Fairy Guide, Spring Equinox Pathworking, and a talk about pixies. Listen wherever you access podcasts and see links for full schedule and to sign up to my Fairy Whisperer Patreon community. You can follow my podcast on Twitter, Fairy Whispering, Instagram, The Fairy Whisperer, or join my Fairy Whispering Podcast Facebook group. I look forward to welcoming you. Love from Claire and the fairies. Hello everyone, welcome to the first episode for Faequinox, our month of episodes and events for March, embracing the joy of spring equinox together with the fairies. And you're in for a lovely treat. My guest, Sam Meredith, is a Reiki master practitioner, inspirational writer, intuitive energy artist, spiritual coach and light language channel. Sam is also a member of my Patreon community. We had an enjoyable and inspiring conversation about Sam's work, her childhood connection with fairies and her moving reconnection with them as an adult in the last few years since the pandemic. As a child, Sam spent a lot of time playing happily on her own in her garden, never feeling alone. Sam talks about crossing a threshold into fairyland in her garden, how the fairies helped her to understand plants and playing happily for hours. She also talks about her imaginary friend who is now her guide. Sam shares a special experience about how she felt moved to start to channel light language in a favourite place of hers in Cornwall. We discuss the importance of nature connection for our well-being and how the fairies remind us about the importance of being, joy and fun. Sam and I recorded our chat on Zoom, and I will release our video chat on my Fairy Whisperer YouTube channel tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. GMT. Do look out for the orb at around the 1 hour mark of our chat when Sam is talking about the importance of us all connecting. It's a really uplifting episode, and Sam has very generously created some bonuses for my patrons. There's a guided audio journey called Return to the Summerlands and some energy artwork to help you connect with the audio journey. I will put Sam's links at the end of the show notes for this episode. Enjoy this episode and I will come back to you at the end for some closing thoughts. Hi Sam.
Hi.
Sam's got some lovely experiences with fairies to share and she's going to talk about her wonderful work as well. So Sam, could you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about you and what you do, and then we'll talk a bit about your experiences.
Thanks, Claire. Thank you so much for having me on and giving me this opportunity to chat about my experiences and about the work I do. So actually, I was thinking about this before I came on. What do I do? Because it's got harder and harder to define as I've grown as a person and as a being of energy, I suppose, in this world, and seeing myself more as just a being of energy and just flowing with life. So my spiritual journey really properly started when I learned Reiki. I really properly, consciously connected to that spiritual journey, which was about 15 years ago. So I went and did my Reiki 1, and eventually I trained to be able to teach Reiki. So I'm a Reiki master, which I find a slightly strange definition, because when you become a Reiki master, you actually realise you know nothing about it, really. It's a bit of a misnomer. So my background is in Reiki, but I've since gone on to do all kinds of energy work. I discovered that I'm a channel. I'm a light channel. So I speak light language. I also absolutely adore writing visualizations and meditations. So I hold regular meditation groups, online and offline, which I've done for about 10 years now. And so the way I define myself now is I see myself as a soul nurturer. That's what my team tell me I am. I simply hold space for people so they can see how beautiful they are, so they can reconnect with their gifts, they can reconnect with their heart, and they can reconnect with themselves and their inner voice. And I have all these different tools at my disposal to help me with that. And that's who I am. That's what I do. That's the work I love. So that's me.
Beautiful. Obviously, yes, you're a kindred spirit then.
You see, that's why they put us together, Claire. Yeah. They know what they're doing. We just have to, get out of the way and let them guide us.
Yeah. My so this is about you, but my background is in Reiki and other healing modalities as well. Yeah, but it all leads on to other things, doesn't it? So
yes.
What drew you into that work? And,
okay.
So tell us a bit about that.
Well, I will go on to talking about my childhood in a minute, but so I was briefly talk about my childhood, but not in relation to fairies, but I was a very, very sensitive child, very, very sensitive to everything around me. Just thought that was perfectly normal until I got to a certain age when I suddenly realised that other people didn't have the same experiences as me. And actually, I scared other people a little bit, because I would have friends come to me because I'd be very, very open-hearted. I classic wear my heart on my sleeve. Other people would come to me with their problems and wanting someone to, if they were feeling rubbish, to hold space for them, which I would do very happily. And then they would end up feeling quite vulnerable because I think they realised I knew them better than they knew themselves. Or, maybe they weren't in a place where they could see themselves. They weren't comfortable seeing themselves. And so I ended up having a lot of people push me away. So I made that my fault. I took that responsibility for their pain and the stuff they were going through. I took that on as my stuff. So as a teenager and into my early 20s, I ended up getting into a very, very toxic relationship, very horrible. Well, at the time it felt very horrible, and it was we're talking about cataclysmic experiences before we came on, weren't we? It was a cataclysmic experience for me. I got to a stage in this relationship, didn't obviously start off as toxic, it started off as a lovely relationship, but ended up being a very abusive relationship, where I got to a point where it's either leave this abusive relationship or self-destruct. And one day I packed a bag and I just left this relationship, didn't know what was going to happen. And it was at that point where I thought, it's time to reconnect with myself. I don't know quite how to do this or where I'm going to go, or, I just knew I was quote unquote broken. None of us are broken, by the way. None of us are broken, but that's how I felt. I felt completely broken, completely abused by the world, absolutely hated myself. Really, truly hated myself. And it was a simple choice of, do I want to be on this planet anymore, or do I want to choose me? And I chose me. And then my healing journey and my connection, my reconnection back to spirit, my spiritual side, my heart and my inner self truly began. And that was when I ended up looking for a Reiki master to train me. And I'd prior to doing Reiki, I'd already had some experience of energy work without knowing I was doing it. So my husband was a semi-professional rugby player. So I used to do healing work on him. So if he had, injuries or whatever, I would just place my hands on the area that hurt. And he said, "Oh, it always feels better. It always feels better." And so I found out about Reiki. And also the other thing, I used to see colours. I still see colours now, but I used to see colours when I put my hands on. And I used to always see colours in loads of different situations. I'd see and sense colours when I was connecting with people. And I assumed everybody else saw these colours the way I do. And it was only through beginning to share my experiences that I realised not everybody saw colours the way I did. So that's why I ended up going and finding my wonderful Reiki master, who is now a very, very good friend. And we work together sometimes. And my Reiki journey began. And that's what drew me to it, to really reconnect with myself. And that spiritual part of me that was screaming out, I think, to be heard, to be listened to, and to be explored. And now, 15 years later, here I am. And honestly, Claire, with some of the stuff I'm doing now, if you told me I'd be doing what I'm doing now, I would have just been like, "Joe, you're just having a laugh." I just would not. I wouldn't have believed it. I've held sessions for groups of people regularly, doing meditations where I stand at the front of the room and do stuff. I do online stuff. I've done online meditations for groups of like 50 to 100 people for my husband's work, and all around the world. And I look at that and I think, in fact, I was having a moment like this the other day, just thinking, wow, what a journey. Just giving myself permission to stop and go, look at this journey. And like we were talking about taking time to stop and move inwards and listen and to reflect on your journey and where you come from and where you're going, to actually take that time out to stop. I think, wow, what a journey it's been for me.
Yes, it is. I mean, and so many of us that end up in this healing, or I suppose alternative world, as it's sort of framed currently. It's not really, but
no. It's a different experience, isn't it?
Yeah, different experience. Have that journey. I know I have myself, that that traumatic sort of past that breaks you open and makes you think. Almost, it's like a remembering, isn't it? It's a horrible way to get there. But it breaks us open to who we really are. Absolutely.
And I think sometimes you have to have those experiences where everything gets so shaken up, so that you are invited to go in and reconnect with yourself and to see yourself. And then that's when you begin to do that, that is really when the magic happens,
Definitely.
It really is. It is the ultimate alchemy, the ultimate magic, when you can learn to love yourself. And it's the best investment of your time.
Yes.
And it benefits everybody around you when you invest in yourself. It truly, truly does. And from a person who's gone from, really not having any time for myself, to recognise that and to see that, and if I get that message out to anybody listening to this, investing in yourself is never, ever a waste of time, ever. It's the best gift you can give to yourself and to everyone around you that you care about.
Now a quick break with some news from me. Hello dear listeners, the Fairy Whispering podcast is an independent show entirely produced by me. To keep the show rolling, please show your support by becoming a monthly subscriber on the podcast Buzzsprout website, or on my Fairy Whisperer Buy Me a Coffee page, and by following, sharing with a friend, and leaving a 5-star review. Also, if you or someone you know has had a fairy encounter or other unexplained encounter, I'd love to hear from you. You can send me your story to claire@fairywhisperer.co.uk. All of these links are in the show description. Thank you. Now back to the episode. Absolutely. Yes, it has a knock-on effect, doesn't it? And it just has a ripple effect.
Absolutely.
And in the most sort of in ways that you can't imagine. I mean, if somebody had said to me 15 years ago, you'll be doing a podcast, I'd be like, what? You're crazy. Never want to do. But, you know, it's because of that journey that we do these things, isn't it? And
you end up meeting the most incredible people. The more you connect to your heart and all of yourself. When I say all of yourself, I mean all the aspects of yourself, not just the bits that you find easier to like, but all the bits, even the bits you think, oh, I don't really like that aspect of myself. If you can learn to love all those bits, you begin to interact with the world in a different way. You step out with, I mean, you hear this talked about a lot in spiritual circles, authentic, you know, confidence, authentic light. But you begin to step out as this authentic person, as who you truly feel to be, because you're not so scared of how people will react to you, because you love yourself. So in a way, I mean, we all want to get on with people, right? But you just accept that you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and that is okay, because you love you. And if you have that foundation, it underpins everything else. And as you begin to step out as yourself, other people see you. And I mean, you know, see you. I don't just mean with their eyes. They feel your energy and they think, yes, feel that person. I want to connect with that person. And, you know, without even really an agenda, just they want to be in your space. They feel that magnetic attraction. And then incredible things happen. And, you know, it's been so true for me. The more I've just stepped out and said, this is me, this is what I do. You know, I wouldn't have met you, Claire, because, you know, I just shared on your page about my fairy experiences. And just the more you do that, the more you connect with these incredible people, and you create these spaces where amazing things happen and you inspire each other's growth. And it's just the most beautiful, magical, life enriching thing. It's just, I love it.
It is so true. It's so true that people, I think once you start to emanate that, it really, it goes beyond, excuse me, it goes beyond that idea of, oh, you have to work really hard to achieve and blah, blah. You don't. You just have to radiate who you love yourself and just radiate who you are. And the right people will be drawn to you. And they'll be like, I want to work with that person. And like you say, we can't all be everyone's cup of tea, can we?
No.
And it's like,
that's okay. But that's okay. That's just, you know, when we incarnate in our bodies here, we have different experiences with different people so that our souls can grow. And part of that might be actually not getting on with people. And when people do come into your life and trigger you, in inverted commas, actually that, as much as it's uncomfortable, it can often do you massive favours. It brings stuff up that you're ready to witness or simply ready to release so that you can grow more. And I think that's something for me, when I recognise sometimes people trigger me, rather than kind of getting contracted around it and frustrated and cross, you know, I might let myself get a bit annoyed, but then I go, okay, hold on a minute, step back, you know, don't create a story, don't attach too much of a narrative to this, just breathe, just reconnect with your heart and just navigate this experience from your heart space rather than letting your ego and your mind get too involved. And it really helps.
That's a really lovely tip, because I think all of us, we're all human, and no matter what we do, whether we're doing meditation or yoga, whatever practices we're doing, it's the awareness of that, I think, isn't it? It's the awareness of what we're feeling. And like you say, oh, that is triggering me. So this is what I can do about it. So time for some self-care. Really pile on the self-care at that point.
A mantra that I've been given recently by my higher self, which was, is the world happening to you or is the world happening for you? Which I really, really like, because especially if I feel triggered, I can come back to that and think, well, hang on a minute. The world isn't happening to me. I am part of the world. And this brings beautifully back to fairies and nature.
Yeah.
You are part of this world. And there's been so many synchronicities lately reminding me I'm connected to everything and to nature particularly. But when you remember you are part of the universe, you are an intrinsic part of the fabric of the universe. And inside you is all of the universe, all of the wisdom, all of the energy, because you are part of it. You are not separate from it. And when you remember that, you remember that these experiences, even the triggering, challenging ones, are happening. They're opportunities for you to grow from and to grow through. And that does help me hugely. That's not to say that you can't sit there and be cross and, put your head in your hands and go, oh, no, because again, that's human. But then to stop and to remind yourself, this is an opportunity for growth. My higher self is up there somewhere managing this and knows what it's doing. And I have to trust and let my little ego self have its minute of tantrum and then go, it's okay. It's all right, ego. It's going to be fine. We've got this.
Yeah. And those are the times when some of the most amazing things like you say, when you do the stomping around or frustrated or whatever, and then let it go, and the dust settles, you come back to your center, then that's when the most beautiful, amazing ideas can arise, can't they? About, that's a new path I could follow.
Exactly.
And the way opens up again, doesn't it? So it's something very temporal.
It stimulates this amazing kind of chain reaction inside us, I think. And so rather than resisting this stuff, if we can relax through it as much as possible, then I think we navigate it quicker and we can paths that we might not have ever been aware of before. So it can be really hard. Like, I get triggered by stuff, I get affected by stuff. I'm not sitting here saying, I never get affected by it. I really do. But I just have these tools and this perception which really help me navigate my life with much more grace now, and from a much more empowered perspective, rather than thinking, I'm at the mercy of everything and it's all out to get me and it's a big fight. Actually, it doesn't have to be a big fight. When you relax into it and you listen to yourself, you listen to your heart, you feel into your light, and you remind yourself you're connected, and you allow yourself to feel into the flow. And let's face it, I imagine most of your listeners here are very, very sensitive souls in one way or another, and they have their gifts and their sensitivities to enable them to feel into the flow. And rather than fighting it, go with it. I talk quite a lot in various memes and posts and things about surrendering into the flow. That doesn't mean giving up. It means feeling into the flow and going with it, and going with it with your heart. Really open up your heart rather than feeling afraid of it. Allow yourself to be open to it, and then you become open to all the opportunities and the beauty of the experiences. And if you can find the beauty in the challenging stuff, then when the really amazing, beautiful stuff turns up, my goodness me, it is just mind-blowingly beautiful because you are so open to it. And you're basically saying to the universe, I'm liking the positive stuff. I'm liking the really mind-blowing, expansive experiences. I'll have some more of them, please, and then more shows up.
Yes, definitely. It is about being on that vibration or flow. And once you click into that, that's when it's like, wow, I'm in this space now and more can happen, like you say.
It's a snowball though, isn't it? You have to get the snowball going. And once you've got it moving, then you get the traction. Things start moving actually very quickly. It's just getting it moving in the beginning can feel quite challenging.
So that's really lovely. Really interesting conversation we've had that we didn't plan. That's really come out of the blue, but it's really helpful. Thank you for sharing that. I'd like to go back now to your childhood experiences with fairies, because In a similar way to me, really, you had this kind of lovely connection with fairies, and then you've just spoken about a difficult time in your life, and then you've said that you're now coming back to fairies. So if we could I'd really love to hear your childhood experiences,
Oh, I'd
and
love to share it.
yeah, and the place,
Yeah,
about the place
absolutely.
as well.
Absolutely. Well, I sent some photos to you, so
Yes,
you're very welcome to share those if you feel
I
to.
will.
The
Yes,
photos I
thank you.
shared with you are the garden. In a lot of ways, is very similar, but it's not quite the same as when I was as a child. In the picture, there's a photo of an oak tree which sadly came down in one of the last storms we had
Right.
last winter. We had a really,
Mm.
really, I don't know if you remember, it was a really quite severe storm and lots of trees came down. And this oak tree must have been in my mum and dad's garden for over 40 years, because I'm 44 now. So, a long, long time. And this was where I had the majority of connections with fairies. So,
Mm.
in many ways, I was very privileged, I feel, as a child. I grew up in a beautiful rural part of the world, in West Sussex. I've got 2 older brothers and a younger sister, and a very loving mum. She's very relaxed and kind of open-minded about the work I do. She doesn't really understand it, but she's always been quite accepting of my overactive imagination, as it was deemed by my family, which is interesting because I think even at a very young age, although my family, they were never mean about my feelings of being connected to fairies and talking about fairies and my imaginary friends, you kind of, even as a child, you saw the eye rolls and the, oh, don't talk about that in front of these people because that's embarrassing. Oh, she's a little bit odd. Samantha's a bit strange. She's a bit overactive imagination. She's very oversensitive. I'm sure lots of people can relate to all of that.
Yes, yeah.
As a child, up till you get to about teenage years, people kind of tolerate it. But anyway, having said all that, I was very lucky because my mum was very busy having 4 kids, and it was the 80s. You pretty much were allowed to kind of just go out and play all day without constantly being watched, which is interesting, actually. I was reflecting on that and thinking how many children now get the opportunity to connect with fairies.
I know. It's that, yeah, I reflect on that as well with my children. Yeah.
Not really allowed much time, especially
No.
young children. And I'm not making this right or wrong, by the way. I'm a parent,
Yeah.
and it's natural to want to protect them. But I digress a bit. As a child, I used to play loads and loads and loads out in my mum and dad's garden, and I was very, very, very fortunate. They have roughly an acre of garden for me to play in, and that was my playground. My younger sister, who I'm very close to, is 5 years younger than me, and my brothers are, my oldest brother, I think he's about 5 or 6. I can't remember how old he is. He's about 5 or 6 years older than me, so it's quite a reasonable gap. And having 2 older brothers, you can imagine I got to an age where they didn't want to have anything to do with me anyway. But I used to go and play on my own for hours and hours and hours in the garden. And my favourite thing to do was to play down the bottom of the garden, where we had a swing on this oak tree. And there is like a bank, which isn't really clear in the photos, but there's a bank where the oak tree is kind of set into the bank. And there's a lowered area where there's these steps down. And from the photo I sent you, there are these pillars and there are these steps, and it's become quite overgrown, so you can't really see it. But I always used to think that they were the steps to the other world. I didn't think anything. This was what I was told in my head. These were the steps to the other world, and I'd walk down the steps to the other world, and the fairies would be there, and there was a river of light, and I would go into the boat on the river of light, and I would sail away, and the fairies would be there. And for me, my experience of fairies, I would feel them before I saw them. I would feel them. I could feel the joy, the uplifting kind of sense of playfulness and the curiosity and the creativity. And they would kind of show up, not like flashes of light. You kind of almost see a flash of light. You think, did I see that out of the corner of your eye? And then I kind of be drawn to where this flash of light was. And then there'd be like a beautiful flower or an interesting stick, or, you know, something like that.
Yes.
And then that would inspire my play. And I just remember playing for hours and hours, never feeling alone, always feeling like I had friends, always feeling happy, being plastered in mud, picking all sorts of flowers I probably shouldn't have done. And the other thing, which I find hysterical now, is I remember setting up an area. My parents had these leylandi trees, you know, and they got massive. And I set up this area where there was all these branches sticking out, and I had pots and old saucepans and, you know, empty margarine cartons. I set them up. I had all different leaves and sticks and stones I collected around the garden, which the fairies had helped me find. And I'd make my little potions, you know, and pretend, you know, that. And I just think now, I think, oh my goodness me, you know, how much of my childlike self was connecting into nature and the natural kind of remedies potentially, but also past lives where I'd probably been a healer and, you know, done the same. And I find it really, you know, funny now. So I was very, very lucky. I had beautiful experiences with fairies, which I just assumed was normal, and everyone had those experiences. And they were also a doorway, the fairies, to other magical beings, because I was very lucky to have that relationship with it. And for years I had that relationship. I also had one particular imaginary friend, which I now know is my guide. I've got several guides, but a guide that's been with me for life, who I call Gemmy, which is, you know, fairies and gems and sparkly things. But I mean, that imaginary friend was with me for years, to the point where he would have to sit next to me at the dinner table. You know, this wasn't just a 5-minute wonder. This was someone who was with me all the time. And I remember him being there, you know, if I felt afraid or going to sleep, and having the most amazing experiences as I drift off to sleep, of being in other worlds and other places. Always rainbows. You'll see there's a bit of a theme with my work. Everything's
rainbows.
I'm so
beautiful,
deeply moved by rainbow lights, and I work a lot with diamond rainbow light and healing sessions. And I feel like the fairies, that's a vibration the fairies really connect strongly with. I almost feel like it's a bridge to that dimension.
Yes.
I don't know, I'm just talking totally intuitively now. I've read nothing on it. That's my feeling, and I trust more and more just to go with my feelings. And so I feel like they almost create this doorway, or they created a doorway for me to connect to other magical beings in confidence, because they're so uplifting and joyful. They almost hold you by the hand and take you to this amazing magical world of creativity and potential. And you know, you can meet all kinds of incredible magical beings. So unicorns for me, unicorn energy. And again, unicorns were with me all the time as a child. And, you know, it's just, there's an endless list, particularly, like, I feel for me, ancient tree spirits and ancient ancestors, like ancient guardians of the earth. I felt, particularly in the last 12 months, a real strong reconnection to them.
Yes. And the tree, the fact that you connected with the oak tree, you used to play near an oak tree, and fairies are said to inhabit, well, all trees, but especially oak trees. There's supposed to be, you know, just myriads of fairies, according to old folklore, in oak trees. But I've experienced that. I have an oak tree opposite my house that I feel is very much a portal. And trees are gateways, aren't they? So can I just take you back to this idea of the threshold, because that fascinates me, because in a lot of path workings with fairies, which I do, I expect you do something similar as well. There's this, when you're going through a path working, one of the things that people are led through is to go down steps.
Oh, that's so fascinating.
So it's almost like this, you know, on the first step, second step, and the deeper you go, the further down the steps, the deeper you go into that realm. So you were really tapping into something very ancient. Did you feel that? I mean, that's my interpretation.
Yeah,
But
I
did you
think
feel something really ancient? The
I think
themes that were coming up for you?
absolutely. I think what's
Yeah.
interesting is at the time, as a child, I didn't think about it. And I
No.
think that says it all. I was just totally listening to my heart.
Mm.
My mind wasn't getting in the way. I was literally like, I go down the steps and I'll be taken to the other world. There was no like, like as adults, we'd be like, oh, I think I must question this and think about whether this is real. Or, there's none of that. It was just, I just go down the steps to the other world.
Yeah.
And it was that easy. It was literally because I think my heart was so open.
Yes.
And I was in that vibration. I was with my friends. I was, it was the most natural place in the world for me to be. I would
Yeah.
just go down the steps. There wasn't any resistance, and as adults, we create all these stories and all
We
these layers and
do.
all these things to protect ourselves.
We
And
do.
I was
Yeah.
totally open to it. And
Yeah. And sorry, Sam, I'm really excited because of something else you mentioned, which was the river of light
yeah,
and the boat.
yeah.
So that is something that has come up for me when I've been journeying with fairies, a boat that takes me to a fairy guide, across a river into fairyland. Um, is this river a light? Is it something that you could see psychically, or is it something that was in your third eye, in your imagination, that you suddenly thought, right, I'm crossing this threshold now, and there's the river of light. How did you see that?
I think I saw it in my third eye.
Mm,
But that to me, it was quite hard to separate the two
yes.
because
Yeah.
although it was in my third eye, it was as real. It was as real as as anything there. At the it's hard to explain. It's almost like two dimensions happening at the same time.
Yes.
It's almost like the realm, that fairy dimension, that vibration that the fairies inhabit. Although physically you couldn't see it, in my mind's eye, it was as clear as a photograph, and I can see it now. I can step back into it. And what's so fascinating, it's really interesting talking about this, actually. I write a lot of meditations, as I said at the beginning. I've written a meditation, which I wrote specifically for children, actually. I did it at the start of the lockdown.
Oh,
Kids were
lovely.
struggling.
Yeah.
I wrote a meditation which is about a journey on a river of light that takes you to this amazing portal of transformation. So I'm obviously tapping into,
Yes, because I mean, so many people I've spoken to, and me as well, during lockdown, just had these incredible inspirations to create things like that to help people. So
I
yeah.
think it was a real invitation for me to reconnect to that experience with the spiritual world and other dimensions and other beings. It was a real invitation to reconnect with the kind of purity of those experiences and to reconnect. And I think this is one of the things of fairies. They have many, they help us in many ways, but I think they really help us reconnect to our inner child. I really do. As adults, I think they remind us so much about joy,
Yes.
the benefit of just doing stuff just for fun, and to remind us that life is not all about doing. Life is about being. And for me, that's the energy that fairies bring. And they reconnected me. I had the most beautiful experience in meditation where I went back to my childhood self in this garden.
Oh.
Fairies were there. And I went back as my adult self. And I sat and I held myself. And I said, I love you. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks because I love you. And I'm sorry that at some point I stopped loving you because other people couldn't see see your beauty and your light. But I'm going to go back now. And the fairies were there, and it was in this garden, and it was such a moving experience to have that reconnection. very healing.
Mm.
And it felt like in doing so, it created this kind of reconnection to all of my history, and it just helped clear so much pain. And it was incredibly empowering because I did that. I took responsibility for that. But the fairies helped me to do that. They were very much there.
Yes, they're such loving beings. Wow. Have you been back to the garden? Do you go back there? And
yeah, because my mum still lives there.
Yeah.
So I go back there quite a lot, and it's lovely. I take my kids back there, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And I go, and it's actually the bit where I connect with the fairies, particularly right down the bottom of the garden. And there's blackberry bushes down there, so I go down there with my kids, and they pick blackberries. And fairly recently, actually, before it would have been about 2 years ago, before the oak tree got blown down, my son, who absolutely adores nature, I mean, he absolutely adores nature. He's the kind of child, you walk along the pavement and there's a snail going across the pavement. He's like, no, you've got to stop. I've got to pick this snail up, otherwise it's going to get trodden on. Or, earthworms, spiders. He absolutely adores nature. He found a toad, which was at the bottom of this oak tree. It was sat there, like they do, like pretending to not be there.
Yeah. Hiding. Yeah.
Mommy, there's a toad. It's amazing. And it was just beautiful. I just thought, what an amazing opportunity to be able to share this space with my children. And I was telling them about the swing. And actually, when the oak tree was still there, the swing wasn't there anymore, which I used to sit on, but the rope from where the swing was hung up was there. And I was sharing this, the experiences I had there.
Yeah.
I'm very honest with my kids. I'm very open with my kids about my work and my experiences. And they're very accepting. I've got a teenage daughter now. She's coming up to 14, and she does a lot of eye rolling at me with some of the stuff I say. But then, but they both love the opportunity to talk to me about these things and to connect and to have an inquiring mind and a curiosity about these things, which I think they have. So that's lovely to have shared those experiences with them.
Yeah, that's so important. And it's a natural thing, isn't it, when they become teenagers, because I've got 2 16-year-olds, that they do sort of want to separate from us and come up with their own ideas about things. But I find as soon as I go back into nature with my children, because they had that early experience, because, like your children, there's like a switch that turns on, and they switch from being the sort of back into that mode of seeing things in a more sort of open-minded, magical way, and more open to exploring the world like that. So yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because we go on holiday every year. We've gone to the same place in Cornwall every year. It sounds really boring, but it's the most incredible, magical place for the 4 of us, for my husband, myself, and my 2 kids. And we all just have the most, it's very relaxing, obviously, but it's just the most perfect place for all of us. And my daughter, who had been having she'd been having a very turbulent time, let's put it like that. And she'd really gone very introverted. And I don't mean she'd kind of gone into herself in a kind of exploratory, kind of empowering way. She'd really retracted from the world in pain, didn't want to connect with the world. And we went down to Cornwall, and we had 2 weeks there. And it was like pressing that switch, because it is such a magical place where we go. And she was climbing over the rocks, and she was swimming in there's a mermaid pool. That's what we call it, the mermaid pool. Swimming in this mermaid pool. And she's an amazing swimmer. She's like a fish, literally. 3 Pisceans in this household, which is interesting. But and finding shells and it's that reconnection with nature again, and running around barefoot. I don't think I wear shoes at all for the 2 weeks I'm there. I just walk around and walking on the rocks and the sand and in the sea and getting the salt in your hair and just reconnecting to nature and reconnecting to the magic and mermaid energy. And there was definitely kind of fairy energy, but a different sort of fairy energy by the sea. Definitely a different sort of feel. I don't know if you're much more knowledgeable about this, but different fairies connected to different elements. definitely feeling
Well,
different.
I I'm still learning myself. I think it's just an ongoing process, isn't it, with fairy realm and all of these other realms. I have. I'm going to do an episode about mermaids and mermaid experiences I've had. I tend to be more auditory, interestingly. I mean, I'm an artist, so I'll see things in my third eye, like fairies that I draw, um, or I'll see them in shapes in nature, popping in and out. But I tend to hear fairy music. I've heard fairy music. I've heard mermaids singing on the coast in special places that are more sort of remote sort of coves where not a lot of people go. And caves as well. Sea caves are interesting to go into and sing.
Yeah.
And see what happens there.
I think I'll have to try that next year when I go
there.
I really feel it, but it's magical. Yeah. Honestly, the energy there is so restorative, but it's actually the first place I ever spoke light language.
Oh, right. Yeah, I can see why. Yeah.
It just felt, I literally went and stood up on the cliff and the sun was setting and the wind was blowing. And I felt so moved by it. And I felt so connected to my heart. And I thought, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do it. And it just came through. And it was such a mind-blowing, powerful experience because there was definitely a connection to this ancient it was definitely a she, said she was the guardian of the earth. She was really ancient. It didn't feel like Mother Gaia. It felt like some really ancient energy that's deeply connected, and it came through. And I was out there for about 40 minutes, and I came back, and I must have looked like I've been through a hedge backwards. And my husband's amazing. He's so supportive of all the work I do. Even if he doesn't understand it, he really listens, and he's like, wow, And I think it looked like I'd been through a tidal wave or something. And I came back, and my eyes were wild. He was like, what happened to you? And I was absolutely just buzzing because it was like I just connected to all of nature in this moment, and I was like, oh my goodness me, how do you explain that to somebody? It was so powerful, and so, I feel so grateful for that experience. That was my first experience of, obviously I'd heard other people channel light language, but for those of you who know light language to begin with, you hear it and you think that's a bit strange, and but then suddenly, when you really open your heart and you connect to this energy and just let it flow, it just literally pours out of you like a waterfall. And it was just magical.
Yeah. Wow. That is amazing. You're making me want to go on holiday, Scott. It's a really good ad. Going to Cornwall.
Yeah,
I love
it's a magical place.
It is, yeah. I haven't been there for a while. But yeah, that's such an amazing image of you standing on the cliffs with the wind in your hair and channeling this light language.
And what was lovely was there was no agenda. There was no audience. It was me, the energy, and my heart. And it just felt like, just do it. Just do it. And it was just almost like rewilding my soul. And I think that's what the fairies, the elementals, the magical beings, they're all showing up in force at the moment to remind us of our connection to nature. We've become so separate as human beings. We've become so separate from nature and our connection to the soil, to the leaves, to the air. We've forgotten that we are part of all of this. And when we remember and we reconnect with it, it's life-changing. It's life-changing.
Definitely. I know that's been many people's experience that have had, including myself, a difficult time in their life, and then rediscovered connection with nature and creativity.
It's healing. It's so healing for our souls. Our souls are crying out for it. And so many people, they feel lost, disconnected, purposeless, and it makes them feel depressed because they're missing something in their lives. And my advice to those people would be, get out and reconnect with nature in some way, even if it's literally just to go for a walk around the block. I mean, I know that's not perfect. If you get out into an ancient wood or get down to a river or by the beach, amazing. But get out there and reconnect with nature. I mean, I had this incredible experience the other day, I'm taking it deeper now, where it had been absolutely chucking it down with rain and the leaves were absolutely covered in raindrops. And I was walking my dog and I thought, I'm just going to reach out and just hold on to this leaf at the moment. I'm just going to feel this leaf. I'm going to feel how it feels. I'm just going to connect with it. And I just had such a deep moment of, I'm part of this. You know, the rain is purifying everything and it's enriching the soil. And I was thinking, wow, you know, it's just a leaf. I'm thinking, if you actually stop and take a moment to remember you're part of it, it's just, yeah, amazing to remember.
Yeah, definitely. It's just simple things like that, isn't it? It's touching nature, really engaging all your senses, listening, sitting and looking at the river for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Like, or sitting next to a tree, touching the bark.
I remember particularly actually, funnily enough, as a teenager, I know it's not so easy to do it now, but in the summer, just lying in the grass, in a meadow with the bees buzzing, and you can smell the earth, you can smell the grass, you quite often smell wildflowers, and just lying there and listening. And there's so much you can feel and hear in the nature. It's so busy all around you, and it's all there doing its thing, connected, and you're lying there in the grass just thinking, oh, I'm part of this. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to have to go out for a walk after this. It's a bit wet.
I've been the inspiration for that.
It's a bit wet outside today, but there's some sunshine. So, yeah.
It's better weather today than it was. I think it's supposed to be better again tomorrow. Fingers crossed.
So how have you, just talk about how you've reconnected with fairies now, and just interested in what sort of experiences you have with fairies now you've reconnected with them.
Yeah. So up until the lockdown, up until early 2020, I was practicing as a Reiki practitioner regularly. So I was holding sessions with people and doing regular guided meditations. And when the lockdown happened, I basically lost all my venues to hold guided meditations, and I wasn't able to see one-to-one clients for quite a while for obvious reasons. I had a bit of a breakdown, I'll say. I remember sitting on the kitchen floor crying my eyes out, thinking, I've built up this business, there's people who need my help and I can't help them, I can't reach them. What's the point of all this? Why have I done all this? And I allowed myself to pretty much fall apart again. I have a very vivid memory of sat on the kitchen floor in tears and my husband saying, you can't give up on this. You know, he said, this is you, this is your life, this is me and my life. I say my work, it's my everything, spirituality and energy work, and you know, it is me. But I just felt so like, what do I do? And I took that, once I got over the initial kind of shock and trauma of the experience, and I think, you know, we all had our own reaction to that in our own way to those lockdowns and everything. Once I got over that initial shock, I thought, I'm going to take this as an invitation to reconnect with myself again, to go inwards, to meditate every day again, which I'd got out of the habit of, to listen to my heart again. All those things that I've been telling everybody else to do for ages, but I wasn't actually really doing it. I kind of got out of the habit, and I thought, okay, this is a really good opportunity to reconnect, to write some new meditations, to think about my intentions behind my work again, to reconnect with my intentions, to inquire what my intentions were, why I'd followed the path I had to get to this point. And I ended up doing some going into some amazing meditative spaces, doing lots of shadow work, connecting to some really quite traumatic past life experiences, and allowing that stuff to come up, and doing a lot of purifying, I suppose, and releasing of past trauma. And as part of that, my fairies stepped in again. The fairies stepped in again. They started making themselves known in meditation. And as I said, they took me back to my inner child. They took me back in my mind to the garden where I grew up. And they reminded me they were there. And reminded me that if you're struggling, they're there. And also in came the angels, in came the unicorns, in came my massive support from all the light beings around me, basically saying, we're here. We're so focused on, yes, I've got some particular guides, but I kind of got quite tunnel vision about the way I was working and working with specific guides rather than and controlling the experience and needing it to look a certain way. I kind of put blinkers on myself and put limitations on myself. So by having this opportunity to reconnect with my heart from a real open space without any expectation of what it would look like, and to go with that and to let go of control around how my work would look, suddenly it became so clear how blinkered I'd been. There's all these light beings and angels and, you know, this whole team that were there for me to connect into. And all I had to do was ask. All I had to do was ask and open my heart up, and they were all there. So that's when the fairies came back in, and they really reminded me that it was this opportunity to reconnect to my heart in a much more expansive way than I had been doing, and to remember to find joy in my work again. And for me, I'd almost started to find a sense of guilt in finding joy in my work. It's almost like kind of tapping back into those feelings of not being good enough and not being worthy enough, and getting really kind of contracted around, is it good enough? How can I measure my work to validate myself? You know, so it was really an invitation to stop doing that and to step out of that and let go of that and to expand beyond that. So they really came in to remind me just to have fun with it and to start doing more creative stuff. So with the light language, and also I'm an energy artist. I draw energy art. I express light codes. So with light language, it's spoken and drawn, and I think it can be danced. I think light language can probably be expressed in ways that we don't really know yet, through music and in all sorts of ways. But so you may know light language as it's channeled and spoken, which I do. But also it's interesting the way I get light codes. So light codes, they kind of look like squiggles. I can send some over to you, Claire, if you want to share some light codes.
I'd love to.
So they're a bit like packages of information. They're almost like packets of seeds. Like I'm talking about it now in my head. They're showing me packets of seeds. They are literally like little packets of seeds. So you draw them and you connect with them, and they activate your body. They activate your light body. They inspire your light body. So they might inspire inner wisdom to come up. They might inspire gifts to be remembered. They might trigger stuff to be released, acknowledged, and healed. You know, I think the way they work, I'm learning more and more as I use them, how they work. But what's interesting is I tend to get them quite often in meditation, where it's almost like a zip file, where it comes through my head so fast I couldn't tell you what it was. It like goes like that's like code. You know, like sometimes you see code and it flashes like down the screen. It's a bit like that. I can't really consciously remember. I just know it's been like dumped in my being, in my consciousness. And I'm like, that's going to come out. And then I sit and I script, and anyone who's watched me script live, it just flows. It just comes through. I've watched myself back scripting, and I've just been like, wow, did I just do that? But yeah, so I'm kind of digressing a bit. But what the fairies did for me was they reminded me there was all of this other stuff. They helped open the door to joy and creativity, which helped connect me to all these other opportunities to connect with high vibrational beings of light who are there at this time piling in to help us all. And I've got to share this because it connects.
Yeah.
Before I came on, this is one of my favourite decks, Oracle of the Fairies.
Oh, Karen Kate, I've not seen that one. I'd be interested to. Yeah.
This is one I really, really love.
Yeah.
And I picked a card. I thought, I'll pick a card for this group.
Right? Yeah.
And this is the card I picked out. Ask for help.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, that's fantastic.
So it talks about, in this card, it talks about the angels reaching out. But it's also saying on the card, it says, angels are celestial beings who protect everyone. And the fairies say, now is the time for you to ask for angelic assistance. So I feel like, and I thought this was fascinating because I've been thinking about this anyway, how the fairies are a doorway, they're an opportunity to help us reconnect from a space of joy and creativity to this whole plethora, this whole orchestra of light beings. They're there to help us feel a sense of safety almost, to open our hearts up. They're there to support our hearts as we do this. So it's almost like they're a stepping stone between us and the angels and the other light beings, to kind of dance with you to this amazing dance floor of light where all these light beings are waiting to partner with you. And so when I got this card, I was like, oh, it's perfect. So if you're listening to this and this is resonating with you, reach out to other people, whether it be Claire, whether it be a family or a friend member or someone who you feel that can hold space and support you at this time, because it really is a time to reach out and connect with other people who we resonate with and amplify this light so that the world that we're living in can, so that it can evolve into this beautiful, uplifting place which we all want to move to.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you, Sam.
One more thing I really want to mention. Yeah. So as I've reconnected with the fairies, my husband, he's very open-minded, bless him, but because of his own, he had some very, very traumatic experiences in his early 20s where he actually had a psychosis. So he was mentally very unwell for a while. And because of that, he is quite resistant to being very open. Because there's still a lot of fear around going back into a sort of mental space where he felt very out of control and very afraid. But he watches what I do with interest, and he'll quite often say to me, quite often when he's tired, and when you get into that mental state where your brain's relaxing and you become much more open to seeing and feeling stuff, he'll say, there's blue lights around you. There's blue lights around you. And he'll see them. He'll see sparkling blue and white lights around me.
Oh, that's fascinating, because I've had experience of, for many years, seeing a blue light. I just saw it then, actually. A little blue light up there going, hi!
Showing up. Hello!
Flashing in. And I've seen white sparkling lights as well, with my eyes, and also when I've been in a sort of hypnagogic state. And when I was with a friend a couple of months ago that came to stay, one of my closest friend, she saw the blue light. So it's like, and then I saw one next to her as we were talking. It was amazing confirmation. And there's something else I was going to go back to say to you. It's gone out of my head now.
Maybe it'll come back.
Yeah, I come back. Oh, that was it. I was hearing music as you were talking about light language just now and codes, and you talking. I was hearing. Have you got any music on in the background? I was hearing. It was like harp music.
Oh, okay. Oh, I love harp music as well. I really feel that. I really feel it in my heart.
Yeah, it was just gently playing. So it'd be interesting to see if this recording has picked that up, because I've had
really interesting.
Yeah, because I've had EVPs on interviews.
Wow.
And when I've been out walking with people, I've recorded EVPs as well. It seems to be a bit of a theme.
Yeah, I'd love to know that. That'd be fascinating.
Yeah.
I do sometimes hear stuff, but I'm much more visual. I get stuff show up in my mind's eye. Like quite often when I'm working with clients, it depends on the client's team of people that are in, come to help them. Sometimes their guides are very they come forward to me and they're like, they show me stuff really like boom in my mind's eye. You've got to share this with them. It's like, okay. I feel stuff really strongly. I see and I feel really strongly. Occasionally I get auditory stuff, but not so often. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's why it's so good when we get together and we share our experiences, because we're all like little puzzle pieces, and when we connect together we get this amazing bigger picture that helps us connect and kind of understand. I don't really mean from a mental point of view either. It's more like a knowing rather than a mental comprehension. It's a knowing which brings you a sense of peace.
Yes, and I just saw a white light come from your heart then. It was actually on screen.
Oh, wow.
So, it's like a little white orb that came out of where your crystal is. Yeah. Your heart.
Yeah.
As you were saying that, I was hearing the music again. So it's almost like when you're talking your truth, they're reflecting that back to say, yes,
I've got goosebumps.
The energy.
I'm absolutely covered in goosebumps now.
Yeah, that's what's happening. That's what I'm noticing. Is you're really in your truth, then that energy is amplified. That's the way I'm interpreting it anyway. Yeah. Oh, well, lovely to speak to you.
It's been lovely. It's been an awesome opportunity to get to know you better and to chat, and it's been lovely to share my experiences. And I really encourage anyone who's listening to this, who feels moved by any of what we're talking about, to reach out and share your experiences. I know it can feel a bit scary, a bit daunting, and you can feel a bit fearful of what other people will think. But when you do, you connect with people who do get you, who do understand. And this journey doesn't have to be done alone. It's a very challenging journey doing it on your own. And you don't have to do that. So reach out, share your heart, share your wisdom, because we all have incredible wisdom to share. And when we do share that wisdom, we inspire other people around us to do the same.
Very true. And where can people find you? I mean, I'll put your links in the description and everything, but where the main places?
A website where you can find me, which is www.braintorainbow.co.uk. So that's one way to find me. I have also got a Facebook page, which is Samantha Meredith, R&R, Rain to Rainbow, Relax into Light, which is like my business page. But if you're really interested in connecting and going further, and if you have gifts to share or you want to share your journey, I have a little community. It's a really supportive, loving community of just amazing people, amazing souls who have come from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of walks of life, all around the world. It's only a small group. There's about 100 people in it at the moment. It's called the Rainbow Codes and Soul Scripts community. And that started out as a place where I was just sharing light language and light codes to begin with, as I was exploring it myself. And then it turned into a lovely, nurturing little community. So you're welcome to check that out. They're all free. Just go on, have a look, and you can connect to me and you can share your story, or if there's anything you want to talk about, you're very welcome. So those are probably the main things. And I'm on Instagram as well. But I'll give you all the links and everything. So
that's great. And I'm in your community on Facebook, and it is a really lovely space. There's some amazing people in there, and so I recommend that to people as well.
And it's very much a space where obviously you see a lot from me, but I really encourage people to step forward and to share their experiences in that space. And I think people are quite hesitant still to do that. I have got one or two people who regularly contribute, which is awesome. There's one thing I always say to people when they join: this is a community space. This is something we're collaborating together, and we all it's like this incredible magical soup. We all add a bit, we all add our own ingredients, and it creates this amazing mystery soup, and you never quite know how that's going to unfold or how it's going to look. But I love that group so much. I absolutely love it. It's like my little, I feel like it's a family of light. It really is. I love it there. So you'd be very, very welcome to come and join.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sam. It's been a fabulous chat. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the end of the show, and thank you to my guest, Sam Meredith. There are so many things that I really enjoyed about this episode, especially noticing the connections with previous guests in episode 2 and episode 3 of the podcast, where my guest spoke about childhood connections with the fairies, and also gaining plant knowledge from playing in the garden with the fairies, and also just being in the moment. That's something that we could all do with in adult life to reclaim that for ourselves. Sam and my previous 2 guests, Mary and Isabel, also reconnected with fairies later in life as a result of going through a life change. So that's an interesting aspect as well. That's been my experience too. Of course, the COVID pandemic features in Sam's experience as well as my own of going through that time and then realising how important it was for my well-being to reconnect with nature. A standout moment from this episode for me was Sam's experience of feeling inspired to channel light language, which is a form of speaking in tongues for those of you that don't know what light language is. I really connected with her sense of inspiration from standing on the cliffs in Cornwall and just feeling this complete overwhelming oneness with nature and being overcome with a sense of joy and inspiration. There are some more wonderful episodes coming up as part of this month, so I hope you'll join me next time on the Fairy Whispering podcast. Until then, keep your heart open and remember to be the change.